So at a certain point in the story of RubyLee, you encounter the Grateful Dead and the Grateful Dead community. How did that come about, and when was it?
That was 1985. I signed up for a little street fair in Northern California, Point Reyes Station, and a little community. I was on the green, so I had paintings and prints on A-frames. There was a poster that I saw advertising this event on the green, and it mentioned Wavy Gravy. Wavy Gravy, who's this? I mean, somebody struck a chord somewhere in my memory bank. I had not been raised in America or come of age in America and didn't know who Wavy Gravy was. And I'd never seen the Grateful Dead and even heard of the Grateful Dead. So this huge rotund character comes and plonks himself down on a hay bale sitting next to me, and he starts putting whiteface on his, and he starts to put whiteface on white. He puts whiteface. He sits there, plonks himself down. He's unscripted, you know. Plonks himself down on the hay bale next to me and begins putting whiteface makeup on his face with rainbow eyes and a big red clown nose. And all the little children are gathering around, and I look at him and I say, who is this guy? He's so enchanted me. He was about to celebrate his 50th birthday, and he's having a benefit concert for just about everything in 1986.
Okay.
So I did this huge painting of his face. I mean, it was 6 foot wide, just his face and his bowler hat with rainbows all around. And it was used as the backdrop for this concert in 1986, celebrating his 50th birthday. Then they made a poster of it. In order to better acquaint myself with Wavy's world, because I was painting his portrait, he would notify me of various concerts in the Bay Area and always stick a backstage pass on me. So the first time I went to a Grateful Dead show, never having seen them before, this was 85, 86, anyway, around that time, mid-80s. It was at the Henry J. Kaiser Auditorium. And I walked in. Bobby Weir is on the stage, and he's forgetting his words. I'm going, and sometimes they're playing out of tune. I'm going, who are these guys? You know, I just come from major venues in London, the Festival Hall and the Royal Albert Hall, where people performing there were at the top of their game. So here comes the Grateful Dead. But then during the course of that first show that evening, I was so taken in by the love affair that goes on between the Deadheads and the band. I mean, it was just magical. And from then on, I was in. There was no doubt about it.
I can certainly identify with that. I mean, there really is a magical back and forth between the Grateful Dead and their community. And similarly, you know, I actually had been listening to the Dead for a little while before I went to my first show, but as soon as I saw them live for the first time, I was in hook, line, and sinker. I mean, that's sort of what I did with my life for a good number of years after that. There's really nothing like it. I mean, sure, they flub the words and they might play out of tune once in a while, but there was absolutely nothing that comes close to a good Grateful Dead show and that transcendental experience that everyone really shares there.
Very magical. But now Dead and Company, this final tour that they're on to 2023, they're really polished.
Nice.
I'm very impressed with what they got together for this tour.
So that benefit, Wavy Gravy's 50th birthday party benefit for almost everything. I mean, that featured some real heavy hitters from the San Francisco counterculture scene in the late 60s in general. I mean, I know from studying the poster that you know, Jerry Garcia, John Kahn, Mickey Hart, members of Jefferson Airplane, Ken Kesey, Wavy himself. I mean, who's a larger than life presence. That's a veritable who's who of San Francisco counterculture, and it sounds like a really cool project to be a part of. And I believe the poster itself, it was Alton Kelly that collaborated with you on it. Is that correct?
He's a brilliant artist. I love Alton Kelly's work. But yes, he designed the poster around the image of Wavy's face. And I got to meet all of the 5 Fillmore artists from that time period. I showed with them. And what an honor that was. Oh, we also had The Art of Rock, by the way. The poster of Wavy. Paul Grushkin, in 1987, he put out this huge volume called The Art of Rock. And that poster is featured in there with my credit. Da-da-da.
Cool.
Well, it was cool for me because, it was like, oh, surrounded by all these poster artists. And I have this one little poster that makes it into a major volume of psychedelic rock posters.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's being published amongst the legends of psychedelic art is quite an accomplishment. That's awesome. What was your experience like at the benefit itself? I'm assuming that you were there.
Yes, I was there. That's when I hooked up with Mickey Hart. He was doing a shamanic opera on healing. I had all these costumes, moccasins and deer skins and headbands that I used with my models for my paintings. And I costumed the cast for this shamanic opera. He wanted me to be an angel, to come down from the top, the rafters of the stage, above the stage on wires. And I went, He said, well, you can either be an angel or family. So I said, I'm family, our family. So I ended up being family, and I was dancing with the rest of the family on the stage. There were little puffs of colored smoke going off on the stage. These were created by Magic Steve, who also was a magician that knew my grandfather, who was the magician. I had very long hair at that time, really long hair. So, and as I'm moving and dancing to the drumming, my hair catches on fire. There's an audience, so the auditorium is filled with 3,000 people. So in order not to alert that auditorium, even though Mickey has got his eyes fixed on me and he's drumming where he doesn't skip a beat, but I'm on fire, my hair's on fire, essentially.
Oh,
so
no.
What I did, having been studied Aikido, I gently rolled, and in the roll, managed to put out the fire in my hair, fortunately.
Wow. And so was it just that one time that you guys performed the opera, or was that something that...
No, just the one time, that particular opera. He never does the same thing twice. He keeps, he's very innovative, and he just is exploring and experimenting all the time. I love that about him.
The original painting that was used in that poster for Wavy's benefit for almost everything was quite large. You described creating it, the motivation behind it. Whatever happened to that piece? Where is it today?
Well, it's a long story, but I had it in... When I traveled to New Orleans, I was going to relocate to New Orleans. I was traveling in a U-Haul truck with all my worldly possessions in the back and my little Siamese cat Sky in the front seat. So, but it didn't work out in New Orleans. So after 3 months, I started driving back to my base in California. And I stopped for a month to recoup in Santa Fe. While I was there, I ran into Lisa Law, who did this incredible book, a photographic journal on flashback to the 60s.
Sure.
She somehow connected me with a concert they were having in town to benefit the whales and other environmental issues. They asked me if I'd like to hang the painting of Wavy backstage and try and sell it. I said, sure. So as it's hanging there, David Crosby comes waltzing out. Powerful gentleman. His energy was incredible. But he stood in front of it for the longest time. Anyway, I ended up I came back to California, delivered it to him and Jan's house. But apparently this huge smiling face sitting in his living room in his house in LA did not sit well, because you can see from the expression, Wavy is watching everything that's going on. He can see and he knows everything. It's his all-knowingness and sense of humor. So he ended up donating it to Wavy Gravy, and they now have it hanging in the Hog Farmhouse in Berkeley, California. It's hanging on the staircase.
Well, that is a cool story. So it made it all the way across the country to New Orleans with a stopover in Santa Fe on the way home where David Crosby purchased it. And then it made its way back to the person who sat to model for it in the first place. That is really neat.